Hello, Readers of the Future. I'm Endragh. We're continuing with more of the light fantastic. Last time, Galden, the Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University, sent off an arrow heading their way, and Trimon tried to kill him, but it failed. So we're going to start right away, because I'm kind of reading this a little late. I'm reading this an hour before it's 7:30 now, so it comes out at 9, so an hour and a half before it's supposed to go out. Yeah, today was a late one. Whoops. Anyways, have a bit of table, said Rincewind. No thanks, I don't like marzipan, said Two Flower. Anyways, I'm sure it's not right to eat other people's furniture. Don't worry, said Swirls. Swirls? Yeah, Swirls. The old witch hasn't been seen for years. They say she was done up good and proper by a couple of young tearaways. Kids of today, commented Rincewind. I blame the parents, said Two Flower. Once you had made the necessary mental adjustments, the gingerbread cottage was quite a pleasant place. Residue magic kept it standing, and it was shunned by such local wild animals who hadn't already died of terminal tooth decay. A bright fire of licorice logs burned rather messily in the fireplace. Rincewind had tried gathering wood outside, but had given up. It's hard to burn wood that talks to you. He belched. This isn't very healthy, he said. I mean, why sweets? Why not crisp bread and cheese? Or salami? Now, I could just do with a nice salami sofa. Search me, said Swirls. Old Granny Whitlow just did sweets. You should have seen her meringues. I have, said Rincewind. I looked at the mattresses. Gingerbread is more traditional, said Two Flower. What, for mattresses? Don't be silly, said Two Flower reasonably. Who ever heard of a gingerbread mattress? Rincewind grunted. He was thinking of food. More accurately, the food of Ankh-Morpork. Funny how the old place seemed more attractive the farther he got from it. He only had to close his eyes to picture, in dribbling detail, the food stalls of hundreds different cultures in the marketplace. You can eat squash or shark's fin soup so fresh that swimmers wouldn't go near it, and... Do you think I could buy this place? Said Two Flower. Rincewind hesitated. He'd found it always paid to think very carefully before answering Two Flower's more surprising questions. What for? He said cautiously. Well, it just reeks of ambience. Oh. What's ambience? Said Swirls, sniffling cautiously and wearing the kind of expression that said that he hadn't done it, whatever it was. I think it's a kind of frog, said Rincewind. Anyways, you can't buy this place because there isn't anyone to buy it from. I think I could probably arrange that on behalf of the Forest Council, of course, interrupted Swirls, trying to avoid Rincewind's glare. And anyways, you couldn't take it with you. I mean, you could hardly pack it in the luggage, could you? Rincewind indicated the luggage, which was lying by the fire and managing in quite some impossible way to look like a content but alert tiger, and then looked back at Two Flower. His face fell. Could you? He repeated. He had never quite come to terms with the fact that inside of the luggage didn't seem to inhabit quite the same world as the outside. Of course, this was simply a byproduct of its essential weirdness, but it was discouraging to see Two Flower fill it full of dirty shirts and old socks, and then open the lid again on a pile of nice crisp laundry, smelling faintly of lavender. Two Flower also bought a lot of quaint native artifacts, or, as Rincewind would put it, junk, and even a 7-foot ceremonial pig tick. Bleh. Even a 7-foot ceremonial pig tickling pole seemed to fit inside quite easily without sticking out anywhere. I don't know, said Two Flower. You're a wizard. You know about these things. Yes, well, of course, but baggage magic is a highly specialized art, said Rincewind. Anyways, I'm sure the gnome wouldn't really want to sell it. It's He groped through what he knew of Two Flower's mad vocabulary. "It's a tourist attraction." "What's that?" said Swirls interestedly. "It means that lots of people like him will come and look at it," said Rincewind. "Why?" "Because," Rincewind groped for words, "it's quaint, oddly worldly, folklorish, folklore-ish, a delightful example of a vanishing folk art, steeped in the tradition of an age long gone." "It is?" said Swirls, looking at the cottage in bewilderment. "Yes." "All that?" "Afraid so." I'll help you pack, I guess." Okay, yeah, okay. I hope I said that right. All right. "And the night wears on under a blanket of lowering clouds which covered most of the disk, which is fortunate because when it clears and the astrologers get a good view of the sky, they are going to get angry and upset. And in various parts of the forest, parties of wizards are getting lost, and going around in circles, and hiding from each other, and getting upset because whenever they bump into a tree, it apologizes to them. But, unsteadily through it though it might be, many of them are getting quite close to the cottage, which is a good time to get back to the ramblings building of Unseen University, and in particular the apartment of Greyhold Sculp, currently the oldest wizard on the disc, and determined to keep it that way. He had just been extremely surprised and upset. For the last few hours he had been very busy. He may be deaf and a little hard of hearing, but elderly wizards have very well trained survival instincts, and they know that when a tall figure in a black robe and the latest in agricultural hand tools starts looking thoughtful at you, it is time to act fast. The servants have been dismissed. The doorway have been sealed with a paste made from powdered mayflies, and protective octograms have been drawn on the windows. Rare and rather silly oils have been poured in complex patterns on the floor, in designs which hurt the eye and suggest the designer was drunk, or from some other dimension, or, possibly, both. In the very center of the room is the eightfold octagram of withholding, surrounded by red and green candles, and in the center of that is a box made from wood of the curly fern pine, which grows to great age, and it is lined with red silk and yet more protective amulets, because Greyhold Sculp knew that death is looking for him, and he had spent many years designing an impenetrable hiding place. He had just set the complicated clockworks of the lock and shut the lid, lying back in the knowledge that here at last is the perfect defense against the most ultimate of all his enemies. Although as yet he had not considered the important part that lying back in the knowledge that here, at last, is the perfect defense against the most ultimate of all his enemies. Although as yet he had not considered the important part that airholes may play in an enterprise. He had not considered the important part that airholes may play in an enterprise of this kind. And right before him, very close to his ear, a voice had just said, "Dark in here, isn't it?" It began to snow. The barley sugar windows of the cottage showed bright and cheerful against the blackness. At one side of the clearing 3 tiny red points of light glowed momentarily, and there was the sound of a chesty cough, abruptly silenced. "Shut up!" hissed the third rank wizard. "They'll hear us!" "Who will?" "We had the lads from the Brotherhood of the Hoodwink We gave the lads from the Brotherhood of the Hoodwink the slip in the swamp, and the idiots from the Venerable Counselor of Seers went off the wrong way anyways." "Yeah," said the most junior wizard, "but who keeps talking to us? They say this is a magical forest. It's full of goblins and wolves and—" "Trees," said the voice out of the darkness high above. It possessed what can only be described as timber. "Yeah," said the youngest wizard. He sucked on his dog end and shivered. The leader of the party peered over the rock and watched the cottage. "Right then," he said, knocking out his pipe on the heel of his 7-league boots, who squatted in protest, who squeaked in protest. We rush in, we grab them, we're away, okay? You sure it's just people? Said the youngest wizard nervously. Of course I'm sure, snarled the leader. What do you expect, 3 bears? There could be monsters. This is the sort of woods that has monsters. And trees, said a friendly voice from the branches. Yeah, said the leader cautiously. Rincewind looked carefully at the bed. It was quite a nice little bed, in a sort of hard toffee inlaid with caramel. But he'd rather eat it than sleep in it, and it looked as though someone already had. Someone's been eating my bed, he said. I like toffee, said Two-Flower defensively. If you don't watch out, the fairy will come and take all your teeth, said Rincewind. No, that's elves, said Swirls from the dressing table. Elves do that. Toenails too. Very touchy at times, elves can be. Two-Flower sat down heavily on his bed. You've got it wrong, he said. Elves are noble and beautiful and wise and fair. I'm sure I read that somewhere. Swirls and Rincewind kneecapped exchanged glances. I think you must be thinking about different elves, said the gnome said slowly. We've just got the other sort here. Not that you could call them quick-tempered, he added hastily. Not if you don't want to take your teeth home in your hat anyways. There was the tiny, distinctive sound of nougat door opening. At the same time, from the other side of the cottage came the faintest of twinkling, like a rock smashing a barley sugar window as delicately as possible. What was that? Said Two-Flower. Which one? Said Rincewind. There was the clunk of heavy breaching banging against the window-sill. With a cry of "Elves!" Swirls scuttered across the floor to a mouse-hole and vanished. What shall we do? Said Two-Flower. Panic? Said Rincewind hopefully. He always held that panic was the best means of survival. Back in the olden days, his theory went, people faced with hungry saber-toothed tigers could be divided very simply into those who panicked and those who stood there saying, "What a magnificent brute," and "Here's pussy." There's a cupboard, said Two-Flower, pointing to a narrow door that was squeezed between the wall and the chimney breast. Yeah. They scrambled into sweet, musty darkness. There was the creak of a chocolate floorboard outside. Someone said, I heard voices. Someone else said, yeah, downstairs. I think it's the hoodwinkers. I thought you said we'd given them the slip. Hey, you too, you can eat this place. Hey, look, you can... Shut up! There was a lot more creaking and a muffled scream from downstairs where a veritable seer, creeping carefully through the darkness from the broken window, had trodden on the fingers of a hoodwinker who was hiding under the table. There was the sudden zip and zang of magic. Bugger, said a voice outside. They've got him. Let's go. There was more creaking and then silence. After a while, Two-Flower said, Rincewind, I think there's a broomstick in this cupboard. Well, what's so unusual about that? This one's got handlebars. There was a piercing shriek from below. In the darkness, a wizard had tried to open the luggage's lid. A crash from the scullery indicated the sudden arrival of a party of illuminated mages of the unbroken circle. What do you think they're after? Whispered Two-Flower. I don't know, but I think it might be a good idea not to find out, said Rincewind thoughtfully. You could be right. Rincewind pushed open the door gingerly. The room was empty. He tiptoed across the window and looked down into the upturned face of 3 brothers of the Order of Midnight. That's him! He drew back hurriedly and rushed for the stairs. The scene below was indescribable, but since the statement would earn the death penalty in the region of Olaf Quimmy II, the attempt better be made. Firstly, most of the struggling wizards were trying to illuminate the scene by various flames, fireballs, and magical glows, so the overall lighting gave the impression of a disco in a strobe light factory. Each man was trying to find a position from which he could see the rest of the room without being attacked himself, and absolutely everyone was trying to keep out of the way of the luggage, which had 2 variable seers pinned in a corner and was snapping its lid at anyone who approached. But one wizard did happen to look up. It's him! Rincewind jerked back, and something bumped into him. Sorry. He looked around hurriedly and stared when he saw Two-Flower sitting on the broomstick, which was floating in midair. The witch must have left it behind, said Two-Flower. A genuine magic broomstick! Rincewind hesitated. Octarine sparks were spitting off the broomstick's bristles, and he hated heights almost almost most than anyone else, but what he really hated more than anything at all was a dozen very angry and bad-tempered wizards rushing up the stairs towards him, and this was happening. "All right," he said, "but I'll drive." He lashed out with a boot at a wizard who was halfway through a spell of binding, and jumped onto the broomstick, which bobbed down the stairwell and then turned upside down so that Rincewind was horribly which bobbled down the stairwell and then turned upside down so that Rincewind was horribly eye to eye with the brother of midnight. He yelped and gave the handlebars a convulsive twitch. Several things happened at once. The broomstick shot forward and broke through the wall in a shower of crumbs. The luggage surged forward and bit the brother in the leg, and with a strange whistling sound an arrow appeared from nowhere, missed Rincewind by inches, and stuck the luggage's lid with a solid thud. The luggage vanished. In a little village deep in the forest, an ancient shaman threw a few more twigs on his fire and stared through the smog at his shamefaced apprentice. "A box with legs on?" he said. "Yes, master. It just appeared out of the sky and looked at me," said the apprentice. "It had eyes, then, this box?" "No," began the apprentice, and stopped, puzzled. The old man frowned. "Many have seen Topex, god of the red mushroom, and they earn the name of shaman," he said. "Some have seen Skadel, spirit of the smoke, and they are called sorcerers. A few have been privileged to see Churel, the soul of the forest, and they are known as spirit masters. But none have seen a box with hundreds of legs that looked at them without eyes, and they are known as idiot." The interruption was caused by a sudden screaming noise and a flurry of snow and sparks that blew the fire across the dark hut. There was a brief blurred vision, and then the opposite wall was blasted aside, and the apprentice There was a brief blurred vision, and then the opposite wall was blasted aside, and the apparition vanished. There was a long silence, then a slightly shorter silence. Then the old shaman said carefully, "You didn't just see two men go through upside down on a broomstick, shouting and screaming at each other, did you?" The boy looked at him levelly. "Certainly not," he said. The old man heaved a sigh of relief. "Thank goodness for that," he said. "Neither did I." The cottage was in turmoil, because not only did the wizard want to follow the broomstick, they also wanted to prevent each other from doing so, and this led to several regrettable incidences. The most spectacular, and certainly the most tragic, happened when one seer attempted to use his 7-league boots without the proper sequence of spells and preparation. 7-league boots, as has already been intimated, are a tricky form of magic at best, and he remembered too late that the utmost caution must be taken in using a means of transport which, when all is said and done, relies for its effectiveness on trying to put one foot 27 miles in front of the other. So he was probably stretched that long. The first snowstorm of winter were raging, and in fact there was a suspiciously heavy covering of cloud over most of the disk, and yet from far away, and by the silver light of the Discworld's tiny moon, it presented one of the most beautiful sights in the multiverse. Great streams of clouds, hundreds of miles long, swirled from the waterfall Great streams of clouds, hundreds of miles long, swirled from the waterfall at the rim to the mountain of the hub. In the cold crystal silence, and the huge white spiral glittered frostily under the stars, impenetrably turning very much as though God had stirred his coffee and then poured the cream in. Nothing disturbed the glowing scene, which, something small and distant, broke through the cloud layers, trailing shards of vapor. In the stratosphere calm, the sound of bickering came sharp and clear. "You said you could You said you could Why do I keep going? Hold on, let me get a little bit more of a drink. That might help me. Okay. "You said you could fly one of these things." "No, I didn't. I just said you couldn't." "But I've never been on one before." "What a coincidence." "Anyways, you said, 'Look at the sky.'" "No, I didn't." "What happened to the stars?" And so it was that Rincewind and Twoflower became the first two people on the disc to see what the future held. 1,000 miles behind them, the hub mountain of Cor Celestial stabbed the sky and cast a knife-bright shadow across the broiling clouds, so that gods ought to have noticed too, but the gods don't normally look at the sky, and in any case were engaged in litigations with litigations with the ice giants, who had refused to turn their radio down. Rincewind, in the direction of Great Attune's travel. Oh, Rimward. In the direction of Great Attune's travel, the sky had been swept of stars. In that circle of blackness there was just one star, a red and baleful star, a star like the glittering in the eye socket of rabid mink. It was small and horrible and uncompromising, and the disc was being carried straight towards it. Rincewind knew precisely what to do in this circumstance. He screamed and pointed the broom. Rincewind knew precisely what to do in this circumstance. He screamed and pointed the broomstick straight down. And that's where we're going to end tonight. So yeah, we have first scene, the first problem. That might be a problem. This red small star that's heading towards the disc, which could be really bad, but who knows? Well, I know, but you don't know, so yay! I know. Anyways, I have been Endragh. This has been Light Fantastic. I hope it brought a smile to your face. I have to edit this before it goes out tonight, so hopefully it'll go out on time. I don't know for sure. I'm crossing my fingers. I've got a half an hour to edit it before my stream, so we'll see. Anyways, I hope it brought a smile to your face, and I'll see you tomorrow night. Night-night, guys.